I'm Rob.
And I'm Sarah. Join us as we chat about the light side of heavy vehicles.
What's your 20?
What's your 20? It's brought to you by the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator.
Welcome to episode 2 of the What's Your 20 podcast. Should be a very good one this time round. What are we looking forward to this time, Sarah?
Well, I'm really excited about this episode as well, Rob, because we have had the pleasure of inviting Nicole Rosie, the CEO of the NHVR, back. She's going to give us a bit of an update about what's been happening in the last couple of months for the NHVR industry and what she's heard and what she's seen while she's been out there travelling. And also we get to talk a little bit about the HVNL reform and what's coming.
And of course we've got truck trivia as well. And this is an interesting one. Which Australian state is, or state or territory, is home to the most truck drivers? I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not sure myself yet.
So in your travels in the last 5 months, all around the country, have you had any spooky or unexplained scenarios that have, transpired for you?
There was a great one I used to hear semi-regularly, actually, so it makes you wonder just sort of, is it people just talking or is it something that really happens? But there's a certain road down near Inverleigh in Victoria. There's a fella walking along the side of the road there, seen by a lot of people over the years, and he's not there. Put it that way.
Wow. A little ghosty, huh?
Yeah, but he gets reported very, very frequently.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. There's a similar, I don't know if you've ever been through the Pilligers.
I have indeed, yeah.
And Slim did a song about it, and it was the Pilliga Princess. And, very similar thing, she walks the highways and the truckies seem to see her from time to time. Knowing it, I feel like my skin always, the hairs stand up on the back of my neck and my skin gets goosebumps every time I go through that section of the road.
I do remember stopping there one night going through, years ago now. I didn't have a funny experience, but a friend of mine stopped there the night after and he heard a bit of a tapping on the side of his truck and things were going on, and he crawled out and thought, what's going on here? Because it was actually at the particular parking bay mentioned in the song. And in the morning, he got up and he could see all these little fingerprints on his hubcaps.
No
and
way.
What it was possums sitting in his rims and looking at themselves in the centre caps.
Oh, wow. I was going to say, it's pretty game to pull up there. I don't know. I've always thought of it, but something always just tells me otherwise. So I don't know whether it's the stories from the industry or just intuition.
Yeah, it's funny actually. Like you go through the Pilliga and you see all the trucks parked at both ends and very few parked through the centre. Although these days there is a bigger parking bay there, so you do actually see a few more trucks pulled up. But it used to always be Coonabarabran end, they'd be all pulled up there, and then you'd just see a lot up the Narrabri end and you'd see nothing in between.
That's it. If you did pull up, no one was bothering or your ghosts weren't tapping on the hubcaps or not, you'd actually have probably a really decent sleep.
Yeah. And talking about spooky, I mean, you've done a lot of trips out west. Have you seen anything in the UFO department?
I'm not a non-believer of UFOs or aliens. I haven't been blessed with having to see those, but going on from your early discussion about, Bigfoot and Yeti and the other things that live in the Pilliga, I don't know whether it was fatigue, which, not to say that I'd be driving a vehicle fatigued, but, you get the bit of the white line.
You wouldn't do a thing like that.
No, you get like a bit of the white line fever and, the trees are passing and, you get used to travelling at 100 kilometres an hour.
Yep.
And I was up near Dally Waters, actually, and I saw what I thought was a Yeti that was like 7 or 8 foot. And it kind of stepped out of the forestry line and I had to do like a double take. And that's probably my most, what would you say, alien or unidentified object, but certainly not a UFO. So, yeah. How about you? Have you seen any spacecraft in the sky?
Not spacecraft, no. But actually one of the funniest things that ever happened, and shout out to Silo if you're listening, some years ago now, I was coming down Governor's Hill at Goulburn heading south. And I was on the phone to a friend who was northbound, I think on Wang Strait from memory, so we were quite a few kilometres apart, but heading towards each other. And mid-conversation, he's gone, "Oh, wow." And I said, "Was it green?" And he said, "Did you see that?" I said, "Yeah." And it was obviously a meteor or a comet or something coming into the atmosphere and burning up and across the sky. And we were both looking at it. We were probably 500 kilometres apart, but we were both looking at it at the time.
Wow. What was it, like a meteor or something?
Yeah, like just a a bit of space junk or media or something, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I often hear of that, and I've seen drivers talk about, the space junk coming through, and especially if you do a night shift, out with the rest of the gremlins, it's kind of like really nice to see because you can see it shooting through the sky because there's no light pollution. So
I like to say it's a better class of gremlin at night too.
That's true.
Yeah, a couple of our listeners have actually had some interesting experiences too, so we'll hear from some of those.
So I know people who won't sleep in the Pilliga.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Oh, they reckon there's yowie in there, right? I've had a few mates that reckon they've heard noises in there. Probably only about 6 months ago, I unloaded a single down at Windsor, and my lead trailer was back up at Tamworth, and I thought, 8 o'clock in the morning, don't really want to go back through the traffic in Sydney. I'll go out the potty, just for something to have a look at. And I'll tell you what, I'll take my hat off to them old fellas. Quick they used to go through that potty. It's pretty scary, that track.
Oh, look, I've seen a few lights in the sky that I can't make out, but I did see a green light on the dash of the truck, and there is no green light where that come up, but plenty of shadows, plenty of animals that keep you occupied out there. Yeah, look, as for the unexplained, seen a few lights, can't explain them, whether they're helicopters or planes or our extraterrestrial life. I can't say, but I always look up to the sky. We can't be alone out here. We're a very small dot on a very big surface, so we can't be the only thing out here. So if they're coming to look at us, well, maybe they could give us a few tips.
Rob and I always love hearing from our listeners. So for anyone who wants to share their spooky stories, definitely get in contact with us. We'll leave the links in the show notes.
Hi Nicole, welcome back. It's been a while since we've been talking. It's been about 6 months now. So you've been out and about and talking to people around the traps. What have you found in the industry, or from what people are saying in the industry lately?
Oh, yeah, well, I've talked to a lot of people, right? Some truck drivers, we've been out on the weigh stations and out on the road talking to a lot of operators. Very common theme from the industry, operators associations, and also drivers is this concern about sham contracting, really low margins in the sector, many businesses feeling under pressure from a margin perspective. So I've heard that loud and clear. Second sort of thing is desire for education and us to continue to educate in the role of as NHVR, but at the same time a desire for us to be holding that group of people that is perhaps breaking the law, not acting safely, putting people on ABNs, all that sort of stuff.
Keeping them accountable, yeah.
Yeah, hold them accountable. And I think one of the insights I'd give you there, regulators should always operate across the inform, education, enforcement area. There's about 10 to 15% of the sector that will never respond to education. And perhaps we've been a little bit nice to that 15%.
Yes.
That's changing. Yeah. So one of the things that's happened in the last 6 months is we've got much better risk data. We've combined it together. So we're looking at things like the number of incidents and accidents an operator and a trucking operation has, so down to truck driver level, but also back to the operator.
Yep.
We're looking at how they're going in their accreditation and their audits and accreditation. We're looking at what conditions have been outstanding on audits and accreditation. We're looking at how many times they've been stopped and what failures they've got, fatigue, maintenance, mechanical. And we're combining that data together, and we've got a view now of risk profiles. And for those operators in trucks that have got a consistently poor risk profile, we're acting on those operators. Yeah. And I would say that's what you asked us to do.
Yeah.
We're also commend the industry on the work that they've been doing, elevating the issue of sham contracting sort of at a federal level, and there is now, I think, a bit of a task force.
Yeah, it's become much more recognised, isn't it? As it is a definite problem that needs to be addressed.
Well, it is. And I mean, some people quite like the ability to work flexibly on ABNs and just acknowledge that. And actually that can be quite legal.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there is a continuum in there from legal ABN and people that like that flexibility want a contract. And some of people listening to that call this call will be like this. But then there's some that are actually in conditions that are not complying with the Australian law.
Yeah, when they're being made to work as an employee under a contract or under an ABN,
Yeah, when they're not getting the benefits.
Yeah, that's right. It's not genuinely a contract. It is, this is your job, but we're only going to pay this much for you.
Yeah, and we should be all worried about that.
Yeah.
I mean, my view, and I've been very clear with the sector about it, so this whole issue of you really want us to take action on these non-performers in the sector, these people that are not complying with the law. It's highly linked to what are the tenets of a successful business. You can't be successful over the medium to long term unless you've got good operational practices. And good operational practices are you look after your staff well, you pay them properly, you don't make them drive dangerously or in conditions that are unsafe. Our job is to support the industry to be operationally safe and operationally effective, and sham contracting in its worst form is definitely not operationally safe. So it is of great interest to us. We're very supportive of initiatives to address that within the sector, and we are taking action, not necessarily on sham contracting per se, because a lot of that will be dealt with through other regulators, whether the labour conditions or the tax office. But we are certainly very worried about the safety and sustainability impacts of that on the sector and on the system, and we have it very much on our radar.
That's good. Yeah, excellent.
The other big job we have is access and accreditation, and I like to think of that area as a service. We're servicing access. We're helping people get access to the system. This is if you've got you get your licence as a truck driver, but then you want to carry a load that is not a standard load on a non-standard truck, perhaps, or a non-standard consist. Then you need to get an access permit and jump through a few hoops to get access to the network. The first thing to say about that, there's a really good reason for that, right? Those bigger, more complex trucks, they have a higher impact on the network.
Exactly, yep.
So that is partly to protect you as a truck driver, so you're not being put into positions where you're going to hit things or create damage to the network.
Yeah, big one being bridges, of course, is the
bridges,
obvious one. Yeah,
but even like people don't always think the networks are not all wide enough. They don't have enough berms. There's no rest spots. So there's lots of things in that consideration for the states when they are considering access. Yeah,
because of course it's not just weight either. It's also dimensional.
It's everything. It's
dimensions. I mean, you can be dimensional and very light, or you can be weight and normal size and. Yeah, there's a big difference between the two.
And who wants to be the truck driver that wipes out someone on the wrong side of the road because you're on the wrong route, right?
Exactly, yeah.
This is actually intended to protect the interests of the driver as much as it is the interests of the states and jurisdictions who are worried about the infrastructure and other road users on that infrastructure. So we are in that space. We're very, very aware that the heavy vehicle sector would like better and easier access. And sometimes that process can feel bureaucratic. And for example, we know there's a lot of renewals of permits, like around 60% are just renewals. Coming in, and when I look at that, I think there is inefficiency in that. I think there's a real opportunity for us to start to think about how we do that differently. We were already working, but we've accelerated the work with some of the states to try and move from permits to notices so that we can give broader access. And we're being very deliberate about saying this is a joined-up exercise. We can't do this in HVR by ourselves. So we are linking in very strongly with the work that's happening on the NAS, which is ultimately designed to give more access across the system more easily.
I think one question that often gets raised by drivers in particular, who are generally our audience, is there's a lot of confusion as to who owns the road and who's responsible for that. So I think clarifying that NHVR maybe don't own the roads and we facilitate that decision is something that might, enlighten our listeners to understand how that fully broader process works.
Yeah, I came from New Zealand. We only have a federal government and local government. Australia has 3 levels of government. So you driver guys, I share your confusion because it is very confusing here. But really simply, because I've been an infrastructure owner, right? I've been NZTA in New Zealand owns the infrastructure, the state highway network, and also does all the permitting and things on that state highway network. So I can really simplify it for people. The roads in Australia are either owned generally by the state or a local government owner. There is some funding that comes from the federal government for those roads, particularly ones of national significance, but they are generally, those 3 parties own the roads, with the states owning the major
Yep.
freight routes and the local governments generally running the feeder roads off that. So this is why the system is complex, because actually when you're trying to go from Melbourne to Brisbane, you might want to go inland a bit to
That's
to
right.
pick something up on the way. You're actually going on 2 state highway networks, and you're going on maybe some local roads in both New South Wales and Queensland. And so in that picture, you might actually have 4 councils, 5 councils, and 2 states that own roading networks that all have to sort of together agree that you are safe to
Yes.
run on their network.
Because we've had that experience where everything's great apart from that last 300 metres. You just can't get to the
Bingo.
gate.
So here's how we help. So NHVR was created to make it, you don't have to worry about that, driver. You just come through us and we deal with that complexity for you. So at the back end, we're having to, when you put your access permit in, we're having to work with those 4 or 5 players, align around whether the route's safe or not, if necessary to get permissions for you, which is why sometimes it takes a bit of time. But really simply for you, our role is to be that front end for you to reduce the confusion about who I need to get permission from
Sort
at
of
the back end.
the one-stop
right?
shop sort of
The
thing.
one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And we're here to help. That's why we're a service, because we actually don't own the road and we're not responsible ultimately for the conditions that are being set around access. That's sitting with either the state governments or sometimes others. But we are the ones that are able to translate that into a more simple path for you to access those networks, and that's our job.
Yeah, thank you for that comprehensive overview. I hope some of our listeners understand, I think, what goes on behind the scenes a little bit more. So
Yeah, and the other thing is for people, it's a really interdependent system. So, you know, you might be doing your Brisbane to Sydney run, but if we decide to put heavier vehicles through a portion of that run, there's a whole lot of other road users that might not be able to use, or that we've got to think about,
Yep.
because if you've got pedestrians or whatever else. So, I mean, it is, whilst you're a bit simple, because you're just wanting to go from A to B, and it's
Yep.
really like it's
It
on
impacts a lot of other
it's really
people.
simple. It is a system, and it's an open system. And this is what's different between us and, say, a rail network or even an aviation network. These are not open systems that anybody, the general member of the public's not jumping in a plane and flying around next to the commercial airline, right? It's quite controlled. Whereas the roading network is an open system. Anybody can use it at any time.
a big topic we hear being thrown around from industry is the upcoming heavy vehicle national law reform changes. What are you hearing from the ground?
Yeah, the heavy vehicle national law, it is progressing broadly on track. I think there's still a few steps before it's formally in place, but it is coming. There is some quite significant changes. And I think although the sector and industry was looking for some really, really significant changes, I do think for truckies and others, there's some real gains in here, right? So you are getting, general concessions moving, 1 tonne extra weight, 1 metre extra length. So there's been a big concession here by the jurisdictions and states in enabling general concessions to move by 1 tonne, even though everybody goes, oh, that's not really big. It actually is. It has quite profound impacts. It's got quite a lot of cost attached to it at the back end for jurisdictions and other things. And for the sector, it's a really good gain. So I think that's really positive. So that side of it is one aspect, and that's coming. And the second part of that is there is changes in accreditation as a result, partly because some of those levels have moved, but also the whole way that accreditation is put together is changing. So we are in the process of notifying operators actually about the accreditation program, and there's 9,000 odd operators. Some of you will be working for some of those operators who will have changes coming to them around accreditation. So there are some quite big changes in that space as well.
The NHVR campaigns team have kindly donated a Don't Muck with a Truck hat for us, and there's been a lot of questions from industry that we thought we would put into the hat, and we were hoping you'd be willing to maybe draw some of those out.
I think that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Wonderful.
Let me have a look. Are work diaries changing? The requirements about fatigue are changing. So the way that fatigue will be recorded and managed could potentially change. But I think one of the things that we are very focused on is keeping it as simple as possible. So there will be a lot of continuance of the way that people manage fatigue, but there is some groups that will have slight changes to fatigue and fatigue management just because the rules are slightly changing on what maximum hours and other things are going on. Oh, gee, this one's a long question. Does unfit to drive mean anything different will happen during roadside interactions? Well, look, it depends, doesn't it? If you are unfit to drive, we do have a new law that will enable the SCOs, the people on the side of the road, to now intervene and ensure you're safe, right? However, this is not us doing some sort of roadside medical assessment, fitness of work, walk a line type thing. There will be no medical test on the side of the road. This was actually designed for two things. One is a lot of drivers raised the concern that they were being put into a position where they were being asked to drive too long when they felt unsafe to drive and they really didn't feel fit to drive. So the intention was you turn up and you see one of our roadside spots, you can tell us that you're feeling unfit to drive and we now have powers to support you with that. And two, if there were circumstances where we were really concerned, and we have had people that have been high on drugs or mental health issues, some people have been quite suicidal in the past and things, we can intervene to support that person so they're not putting themselves or others into an unsafe position. So I would say that's the exception. We don't see that very, very often, but it's good to have a power to be able to act when that is the case.
Need, yeah.
But as a general rule, drivers shouldn't feel that at all at risk in this. This is about protecting you. The second thing is, I'm just going to say on this one because people don't really understand this, your boss is obliged to take all reasonably practicable steps to ensure you are fit for work. So if they are also putting you out on the road in that state, irrespective of whether you're being stopped on the roadside by us, they are breaching their duty under health and safety legislation in Australia. So there is multiple bits of legislation that protect drivers. It's all about protecting drivers, actually.
Because a lot of companies have a thing where you've basically got to tick a box. They usually have it as electronic these days, but tick a box to say you declare that you are fit to drive, to try and pass the onus onto the driver rather than be their responsibility.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and you can't. So under the law, just to be really, really clear, you can't just say, you can't contract out of your role as an employer. I'm an employer here at NHVR. I cannot get my employees to sign and say, I haven't created, you're safe in my workplace. You can't contract out of it.
Yep. Yeah. So this really gives the driver the sort of permission to be able to say, no, I've got to stop. I'm not fit at the moment, rather than the company saying, "Oh, but you signed to say you're fit to drive, and you've got to go."
Yeah, and I know drivers. What's the average age of our drivers? 56 or something like that. I'm getting close to that age myself. We get more medical conditions at that age. We've got health-related issues. I know some drivers out there will be very worried about that someone's going to medically assess them and tell them that they're medically unfit for work. On one hand, that's not going to happen, right? We are not going to do that. Your operator might, because they've got that duty to actually make sure you're safe, right? They might. Some do, right? They do a fitness for work every year.
Yep, that's right.
But I'd turn it around and I'd really encourage you, if you're in that position where you're feeling tired all the time, you're not feeling that well, there is some free assessments that you can do through associations, even through your GP or doctor. Just do that every year, guys and girls, but it's mostly guys, because you are doing a job that carries with it some inherent risk. You're in a 50-ton plus, moving beast that if things go wrong will be very, very dangerous. And we care about you. So, maybe care about yourself as well and give yourself that annual health check, because it's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Better to get it early if you're going to have a problem go.
I can actually relate to that exactly, because I had exactly that happen, actually. I because of being on basic fatigue, having an annual, and being my age, having an annual health check, discovered that there was a parameter, one of the parameters of my heart wasn't quite up to scratch. I had no idea. I literally had no idea. I've now got a little pacemaker in the chest, and I'm now 100% legal and above the parameter, and everything's good again. I didn't know, and I wouldn't have known had it not have been for that check.
Yeah, and look, in past lives I've implemented health and safety programs into workplaces, and that fear that people have that they're going to be, lose their jobs over it is a genuine fear. So but I tell you, we have found 20, 30, 40 people that would otherwise be dead through those processes, and we've got them early. Yeah. Way before they lose their job, way before it becomes a medical issue that affects their employment, particularly health, like diabetes, heart attacks. The earlier you go, the earlier you understand, the earlier you can intervene and make sure that you're not a risk to yourself, but mostly that you get home to your families, and that's the most important thing in that space, and that's what we're interested about. This law change is literally just to support people who were feeling they weren't being supported in that situation, and we're the backstop as the regulator should you need our help. Will the heavy vehicle national law changes mean more work for drivers or operators?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, I suppose, for operators as well as drivers is are there more steps? Is there something else you need to do? Is there another accreditation you need to have, or is there something else you're going to have to fill out before you start driving, type thing?
I think if anything, it takes some of that away.
Yeah,
because
that's
the
good,
general mass concessions are bigger, and there's fewer people that therefore will need accreditation to.
So it sort of streamlines.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And we'll talk to you about that as it comes out. I don't think for most drivers it'll be a dramatic change and improvement, but behind the scenes there's quite a bit that's taken a bit of process out.
So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us and answering those questions from industry and from drivers. Do you have any more information or any other messages you want to give to our drivers?
Yeah, I guess as we wrap up, I think it's been a really tough couple of months for everybody. The fuel price, what's happening globally, puts a lot of demands into the sector, and undoubtedly you as drivers will be feeling that in one way or another, whether it's through the diesel price or through your bosses having a bit of stress on their shoulders. So just acknowledging that, it does create additional concerns for us around risk and some of that sham contracting and other things that. So I just really encourage you to be safe, to keep your standards high, don't compromise yourself relative to the broader stresses that are going on. You're a really important sector for Australia. It's also really important that you remain professional, particularly when things get tough. So we're here to help, and thanks again for the opportunity to talk to you today.
So, Robert, it was great having Nicole on What's Your 20 again, which is fantastic. She shared some really wonderful insights about, what NHVR has been working on in the upcoming HVNL reform. What are your thoughts around unfit to drive duty and also the work diaries? Yeah,
well, it was interesting to hear actually, because I know from what I've heard generally, the perspective from drivers seemed to be that they were scared of the idea of unfit for duty, or unfit to drive duty, I should say, based on the idea they thought that it was going to be some extra law or some kind of empowerment by the enforcement to be able to say, you're not fit for duty, you've got to get off the road, or, shut people down basically. Or, potentially as bad as losing their licence and their job. To be that it's actually to benefit the driver in being able to say, look, for whatever reason, momentarily or situationally, I'm not fit to drive for whatever reason, and have the backing of the law behind them so that the employer can't push them beyond their limits. It's a very different perspective that I didn't realise that myself, so that's quite interesting. And of course, the other thing with that was the fact that what was said being it is the company's duty of care to make sure that you are fit to drive. It is not your requirement to sign off to say you are fit to drive. The fact that your ability to operate safely is not 100% your responsibility. It's both parties at share. The company. I know a situation. I won't say it exactly, but a situation happened some years ago now where there was a particular guy who the company knew full well he was not suited to the job. He'd had a particularly bad day, and it led to him ultimately getting on the road, already fatigued, doing a job that he really wasn't suited to, and unfortunately he didn't make it to his destination. It's not up to the driver to tick the box, because if I don't tick the box to say I'm safe to drive, I'll lose my job. It's the responsibility of the employer to say, we've done everything we can to make it possible for you to be fit to drive. And to do your job safely. Safely, exactly, yeah. Like governments and like the National Transport
Commission, or NTC as we know it, they really develop and set the amended laws. And I think for drivers and for operators to understand, or anyone really listening to the show, is that I think NHVR really is just responsible for administering and enforcing these amended laws,
that's right.
and also providing the education and resources about how, drivers and operators understand them and apply them in their business practices as well.
That's right, yeah, in much the same way as the, as far as the jurisdictions go with the states, they make the rules. The NHVR just has to deal with what the rules are to be able to enforce them. It's the same with the NTC, yeah.
So, Rob, I think there's so much to discuss around the HVNL reform, and I certainly think it's something we can come back to visit in future episodes.
I think so, yeah.
The heavy vehicle national law reforms are designed to strengthen safety outcomes while reducing the regulatory burden for Australia's heavy vehicle sector. For further information and updates on the amended heavy vehicle national law, please visit the NHVR website or call 13 NHVR or 136487. So, Rob, before we sign off on this episode, we'll answer our truck trivia question.
Yes.
Which Australian state or territory is home to the most truck drivers?
Yeah, well, it turns out it is New South Wales, with 27% of drivers coming from New South Wales, followed by Queensland, 22.9%, and then Victoria, 22.6%, which really surprises me, to be honest.
Yeah,
I genuinely thought it would be between Victoria and New South Wales.
Yeah, I thought
Certainly,
the same thing.
Yeah, didn't think Queensland would rate up at second. That brings episode 2 to a close, so keep it shiny side up, and we will talk to you in the next episode.
What's Your 20 acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands across the nation. We acknowledge that many of Australia's major road networks are attributed to First Nations peoples, having used star maps as waypoints in their journey throughout Australia's harsh terrain to reach landmarks such as watering holes. We pay our respects to elders past and present and to emerging community leaders.
The views and opinions expressed in What's Your 20 podcast belong to the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the NHVR. The content shared is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice.